Friends, good evening everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is your channel, the Gnostic Institute of Esoteric Magic. And tonight, as we go into lesson number 5 in our seminar of meditation, we are going to enjoy tonight the life of the Zen Master Heshan the Queen. The purpose of this lecture is dual. For starters, this is a good story. But the core behind it is for us to start understanding how is it that the lives of the masters are constantly lived in symbols. When we comprehend that, as we listen to the stories of other masters, we can see how is it that every action, every step that they take is a means for them to convey a teaching for those who come and study their work. So let's start with some words of Master Samael Aun Weor as he writes them in the Christmas message of the year 1965 to 1966, which happens to be titled The Supreme Christmas Message. Samael says, "The Divine Mother announced in a dream to a very humble woman from the Nanking region that she would conceive a child, and indeed she conceived a beautiful child who was born on October 12th of the year 1545. This is how Samael starts narrating the story. And when it comes to Master Heshan, on his first year of life, being the son of Hon, as he starts showing some capacity to express himself, even in his first year of age, he starts demonstrating that he was a devotee of Guanyin. Guanyin is that Asian representation of the Divine Mother. In the Central American tradition, she's known as Tonaitzin. In Christianity, we know her as Mary. And it does not matter really how we want to call her. This eternal feminine principle that permeates everything throughout creation. Heshan's mother was also a profoundly devoted person who embraced Guanyin. And one night, Heshan's mother was dreaming of Guanyin herself and seeing the Divine Mother dressed in a white garment. And she saw how, as she is seeing Guanyin, she sees that there is a little child, and she kneels and she hugs the child in the dream. The next morning, she came to find out that she was pregnant. Now, this may sound like an immaculate conception. And we see immaculate conceptions that happen across all of the cultures of all of the world's great religions. For the Maya, for the Aztecs, as we see the story of Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, well, we see that Kukulkan's mother, Quetzalcoatl's mother, she swallows a little piece of a precious stone, a little piece of jade, and because of swallowing that precious stone, she becomes pregnant with this great man. In the story of the Aztecs, or Huitzilopochtli, where is a representation of our innermost. Well, in the story of Huitzilopochtli, his mother was working inside of the temple, and as she is sweeping the floor, she notices that there is a ball of feathers that descends from the heavens. And full of curiosity, she reaches to touch the ball of feathers, but one of the feathers pricks her finger. As a consequence, she was pregnant. Going even further back in time, at the ancient mysteries of Mithra, we see that Mithra himself, he is born as a full-grown man, and he is born from a solid rock. So we see all of these immaculate conceptions. In the story of Heshan, there is no immediate indication that he was born out of immaculate conception. However, his mother was a profound devotee of Guanyin. And she sees the Divine Mother in a dream. She sees a child in a dream. She kneels, she hugs the child, and the next morning she realizes that she is pregnant. It is crucial to see that this happens, of course, in the first year of life of the Master Heshan, because the number one, Kabbalistically, as we, and you may have already seen in the study of the Arcana of the Tarot, we see that number one is a number of origination. It is a number of new beginnings. But in the second year, Heshan, as a child, becomes very ill. His mother prays, as a profound devotee of Kuan Yin, prays to the Divine Mother, and she makes a promise. If he recovers, I will offer him to become a monk. It so happens that through that divine intervention, Master Heshan recovers dramatically from his illness, and to fulfill her promise, his mother lists Heshan at the Long Life Temple so that he can become a monk as he grows older. And at that moment, he gets a new name. He gets the name Heshan. That name, translated coarsely, roughly, it means Buddhist monk. This second year, thinking in terms of Arcanum number 2, very peculiar in the life of the Master, because here we see the reconciliation of ideas. Here we see the struggle of opposites, and we see how these opposites come to reconcile when there is an action that is indeed superior. In the third year of his life, as a small child, Heshan did not interact too much. He did not seem to do as much as many other children would do, and he was just not playing as much with other children, to the point that his grandfather used to refer to him and state, "This kid is like a wooden stake. He is just there." We find this particularly interesting because being compared to wood indicates that within Heshan as a symbol, there are elements of the tree of life that not only are present there with the symbol of wood, with this representation of the Father speaking, as in the real being, but speaking also of stability. Time goes by, and by the time that Heshan turns 7, he becomes shocked by the death of his uncle. His uncle had been sick for a while, and Heshan had been witnessing the effects of the sickness in this man. As he dies, his mother, Hon, plays a little mind trick with him and tells him, "You can wake him up." And so Heshan shouts his name. And as he shouts his name, seeking to awaken his deceased uncle, well, his aunt is there. She feels so uncomfortable with this that she, feeling hurt, stands and leaves. And then the mother intervenes once again and says, "Your uncle is dead. His body is here, but his spirit is gone." And after some more stories, she says, "You came from my belly." This moves Heshan, even as a child, profoundly. The body is here. The spirit is gone. Where does the spirit go? How can I come from my mother's belly? Where was my spirit before this? And this number 7 that speaks of the Arcanum of Triumph shows how is it that for us to be able to reconnect and reincarnate, that there must be an element of willpower present. If that element does not exist, then reincarnation is not possible. This is why reincarnation is only a faculty, an ability that is endowed to the masters. where willfully they can choose their own zodiacal sign, they can choose the conditions in which they're going to live, the family under which they're going to live, so that they can fulfill and satisfy the work that is intended for them during that lifetime. The rest of us, well, we are simply bound to the law of recurrence. But then by the time that he turns 8 years of age, Arcanum 8, that is an arcanum that always demands tremendous patience, that always brings very curious tribulations, tests, and sufferings into our lives. By the time that he was 8, he starts experiencing the pains of the human existence. And he used to go to a school that was, from the perspective of his village, on the other side of the river. And as he is there, he starts feeling homesick. The idea of having to go to school starts stirring all of these emotions that make him feel so sad. So he decides that he is just not going to go. He prefers to stay at home, close to his mother, to his divine mother. And so his mother hits him with a stick. She beats him. He still does not want to go, so she grabs the child and he walks him to the pier, and she tosses him into the river. And as he is in the river, then she decides to walk back home. The grandmother, the mother of the mother, is seeing these particular events, and so the grandmother goes into the river and she saves him from these waters. And again, the mother brings him back to the dock. And once she is there again with him, his heart changed. He felt like it was necessary just to go on to the other side of the river. And he later on learned that after that event, as he was consistently going to school, his mother would walk back by herself to the dock, and she would sit there, remember what happened, and she would cry profoundly. This idea that the school is at the other side of the river reminds us immediately of the mantra of the Prajna Paramitas. Gate, 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 para samgate, bodhi, swaha. It is a mantra that when we translate it superficially, it says liberation, liberation, liberation to the other side of the river. All of humanity to the other side of the river. Liberation. Hallelujah. And so going to that other side of the river is being able not only to dominate those waters, to transcend the aggressive waters of the river of life, of the current of life. It speaks of triumph. Oh. By the time that he became 9 years old, he loved the Sutra of Guanyin Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the Bodhisattva who delivers the world from suffering. And falling in love with this sutra, he learns it by heart. And as a young child of 9 years of age, knowing that his mother is a devotee of Kuan Yin as well, he offers the chants of the Sutra of Kuan Yin to his mother, which makes her exceedingly happy. This year, number 9, we see this first action, where he is not only learning, in our terms, memorizing this sutra, he is able to articulate it in such a way that he moves the consciousness so profoundly that his mother, in that happiness, she sheds tears of joy. That 9 indicates initiation. It speaks of those beginnings, of those works that are of a superior nature in that space of internal transformation. But then he turns 10 years old. His mother was motivating him to study. She said, you can become a government official of any rank. And what if you become a prime minister? Then what? This is what Heshan tells his mother. If I become a government official, I become a prime minister, and then I retire, then what? And then what? And then his mother says, well, if that happens, then at that moment, you retire. And this puzzles him. And he says, why would I work so hard to reach that goal and then retire? And so his mother looks at him and says, I won't worry too much about that if I were you, because you really don't have that much talent. Notice how his mother, in the same way that our Divine Mother will move us, she deflates his ego. And here, the symbol that we see, the way that our Divine Mother helps deflate the ego is by bringing about the elimination of the defect itself. But nevertheless, she also says, if you become holy, I'll let you become a monk. And so time goes by, and by the time that he turns 12, he was already speaking about not wanting to get married. And saying that, well, his mother spoke to Heshan's father and convinced him so that he would allow his child to become a monk. They take the child to the monastery, and at the doors of the temple there is an abbot, and the abbot of name Shiling receives him, and he says, this kid is different. One of the scholars was there, and the scholar sees the child and says, this boy will be a teacher of men and of heaven. And Heshan, hearing that, says, instead of that, what I would rather be is become a Buddha. In their joy, they receive him in the temple, and he goes through the rigors and the education in the temple, and eventually he turns 20. 20 speaks of the arcanum of victory. 20 speaks of return, resurrection. And so by the time that he turns 20, the abbot passes away. But a few days before Abbot Shiling died, he made a point to visit each one of the monks in the monastery to say his goodbyes. He says, when it's time to leave, what's the use of taking medicine? He says this because other monks, knowing that he is saying goodbye because he is making himself ready to disincarnate, were feeling some attachments, you see? So he assembles his disciples, and they start reciting the Buddha Amitabha's name for 5 consecutive days and nights, invoking of these superior forces to help this abbot, this master, to make a transition. And so, holding his rosary, in reality his mala, close to his chest, the abbot passes away. But 2 days before passing away, as he is continuing to say goodbye to the other monks, he said, I am 83 years old, and soon enough I will be leaving this earth. And even though I have more than 80 disciples, none of them will be able to take my place. And he said, you will listen to Heshan, and you will follow his direction regardless of how old you think or not think that he is. Leaving Heshan in such an important role, he continues to work internally, and by the time that he turns 30 years of age, he is heading towards another monastery, and on his way to the 5-peak mountain, he starts experiencing the deafening noise of the roaring of the wind, and that roaring of the wind and the sound of the water starts to disturb him. As he listens within, the voice is, the disturbance that you feel is created within your own mind. You interpret it as noise. Listen without judgment. Concentrate on the act of merely hearing so that no thoughts of any kind can arise in your mind. Here, at this point in which he is 30 years old, he shares with us a very profound teaching, one that we can bring into our exercise of meditation. The number 30, Kabbalistically, is 3, which indicates a process of creation, indicates that there are 3 primary forces, an affirmation, a negation, and a conciliation here taking place. We see it clearly in this example. Listen without judgment. Concentrate merely on the act of hearing so that no thoughts of any kind can enter or arise in your mind. Continues by hearing that voice. The ancients said that whoever can listen to the sounds without thinking will soon attain Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's all-pervading wisdom. This is a beautiful teaching on how we can start bringing that silence and that calmness into the mind. But eventually he turned 33 years old, the same age of the great master Jesus by the time that Jesus went through the crucifixion. And he was such a master meditator that nothing could disturb him. So he devoted his time to copying the sutra. His state of mind was one of being oblivious to his surroundings. Old monks, they came around and they tried to distract them. Every time they tried, they failed. They even asked his friend, Miao Feng, how was he able to do this? And Miao Feng replied, my friend is used to be in samadhi. At this age of 33 years of age, we see an event that is very similar to what the great master Jesus experiences some moments before the crucifixion. In this case, we see old monks that are trying to create a distraction, that are trying to deviate from the mission. They are trying to create an interruption purposefully, but it is a test. In the case of Jesus, he experiences something very similar from the apostles, and this is known as the test of the masters. In the case of Yeshua ben Pandira, the apostles come to him as he is meditating before praying, before that culminating event, and they say, you don't have to do this. You can walk away from this. And at that moment, the great master Jesus emphasizing what is the purpose, his purpose, and what must get accomplished. So you can see here a very interesting way of presenting the temptation of the masters. And Miao Feng states, he's just used to being samadhi. You just cannot get him out of that state. And at that age also, Heshan has a dream. Bodhisattva Manjushri had prepared him a bath. Manjushri has prepared a bath for you in the North Peak. He was led into a bathing chamber, and he noticed that there was water being poured on his head. And that water, as it came into his head, it started washing away his insides. And his internal organs in the dream just came out. And he looked inside, and all he could see was that he was dripping with brains and bone marrow. The monk picked up and asked, "Is this not clean?" And then he put all that into his mouth and swallowed it, and he tasted it. Body and mind, he said, they felt they were purified like honey. This type of sense of cleanliness, this wisdom that comes with those rivers of milk and honey that Heshan is here experiencing, is the product of comprehension. That comprehension brings about a dissociation from the mind. That comprehension brings dissociation from subconscious memories. That degree of comprehension, that perhaps we should be saying synthesis, brings about the elimination of our subjective perceptions. And so, we see that third factor here, that affirmation, that negation, and that holy conciliation coming into play, helping us disconnect from all of these external elements of the ego to enable the tearing of the bag and allow the consciousness to fully emancipate. And so Samael Aun Weor tells us, the result of illumination is the collective of powers that so many greed for, but that come only to the mystic who has no need for greed. And for us to close, one night, as he leaves his body resting in bed, Heshan unfolds consciously in his astral body and presents himself to the temple of Maitreya Bodhisattva, the Buddha Maitreya. And Maitreya tells him in his astral experience, within us, what discriminates is the consciousness. What does not discriminate is wisdom. So we should interpret this. Within us, what discriminates is the subconsciousness. What does not discriminate is that spark that we have within from our innermost. And so after many years, Heshan decides to walk back and go back home to his mother. And as he is walking back, his neighbors see him and everyone gets excited. And one neighbor says, how did he get here? Did he get here by land or did he get here by sea? And the reply from his mother was, he comes back to us from the void. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We will see you all next week. May all beings be happy.